Welcome to Creating from the Heart. I'm Suzy Vance, and I'm here with Rebecca Riley-Vargas, who is the owner of Three Moons Fiberworks. See all this wonderful yarn? If you could see the other side of this space, it's filled with looms and spinning wheels and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, we're going to find out more about this from Rebecca. Rebecca, how did you get into this? How did you ever fall in love with fiber?
I actually fell in love with the looms first, if you're talking about weaving. I've been doing fiber arts since I was knee-high, of one form or another. But I came across a loom that was for sale slightly over 10 years ago, and it was in pretty bad shape. So it took me a while to figure out how to go ahead and rehab the loom. And in doing so, I learned how it functioned, how it worked.
How clever.
And then taught myself how to weave, not being certain if I would actually like the weaving process as much as I loved how the machine worked. But to my surprise, I absolutely fell in love with it. Completely and totally, and fell down a rabbit hole that I am still exploring. And I tell people all the time, it is impossible for me to be bored doing this. The combination of color and pattern and texture is never ending.
Let alone the equipment.
Right.
Because
exactly.
You have a million looms in here.
I do, and each one has its own personality, and each one likes to do different types of projects better than others.
And you bring them all to life. It's fabulous.
I would like to think that we're giving them a second life. Yes. Exactly.
So how does this work? If I walk in the door and I'm like mesmerized, I know nothing, and I say to you, oh my God, this is amazing. I love all this. What do I do? I understand you warp a loom for me.
Absolutely. So if somebody comes through the door and has no weaving practice at all, what we do is sit them down at a loom that is all set to go. We give them the materials that they need to go ahead and start weaving right then and there.
Oh, this is the way you suck them in.
Right, exactly. Exactly, because they get to see what they can create with colors and patterns. And if they like the process, then we will continue to help them down the journey, learning what they want to, because there's so many different types of weaving that it's impossible to set up one curriculum that's going to make everybody happy.
Right.
And if you want to work on rugs, then we will help you figure out exactly the type of rug you want to make. If you want to make wall hangings, then we'll show you the type of yarn and looms that you need to do that, and let people do what they find fun.
Yes.
And go from there. So
you're creating addictions,
yeah, probably, but it works out, I think, for everybody.
This is great. It's really interesting. When I was 12, my mother taught me to knit.
Yeah.
And I have been playing ever since. When's the first time you messed around with fiber, or was that 10 years ago?
No. I had one grandmother that would knit beautifully, and then I had another grandmother that did crochet beautifully. And I remember, sick days in grade school, one grandma or the other would watch me so that my parents could work, and that was the best thing in the world, was if they would hand me a crochet needle or knitting needles and let me just play with whatever was there.
Did you get sick a lot?
And we had a great time. And as much as I enjoyed playing with the fiber, knitting or crocheting never caught my attention the way weaving has.
Well, part of it for me is, and the way I use it is, knitting is what I do. I don't do crochet because you have to watch a little in crochet. In knitting, because I've been doing it for so long, I can literally knit in a darkened theater and be perfectly all right. But I don't sit still well.
Correct. Yeah, I hear you wholeheartedly.
And so when my husband wants to watch the news, I knit.
That's
so I can be with him.
It's how I started spinning, because I cannot weave and watch television at the same time. Absolutely cannot. It does not work. But spin is the same thing.
Right.
I can sit on a couch and spin, regardless of what's on the television, regardless of the level of light in the room, and it keeps me occupied. Same thing. And there's just something magical about the feel of the fiber in your hands.
Yes.
As you're going.
My mother always said, the feel is what matters.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, spinning is taking the wool from the animal and pulling it, because all fibers are like people. You agitate them a little, and all they can do is hardly wait to be together.
Yep.
They're clinging to each other, and that's how you make yarn. Well, this has been fabulous. This is great. And people can find you?
We are in Chesterton, in the old post office building, and we are on.
How did that happen?
The post, utterly by accident. So when this building was being rehabbed, my husband was on one of the crews that were called in to help. I met him for lunch one day and came in the back door, saw the wide open space, and said, "This would make a spectacular studio." To my great surprise, my husband was like, "Yeah, you're right." So,
isn't it fun when they do that?
That started the planning, and it took us a while to develop a business plan that we thought would work. We had never intended, on opening a studio. It was not on my radar, but the space just called to me. And after we created a business plan, it took us probably another 18 months to get everything we needed in order. And we did the majority of the rehab work here ourselves. And I must admit, I love being in this space, in this building.
It is. It makes my heart warm every time I turn around the corner and pull into your parking lot. It's great.
Thank you.
Oh, if you were sitting here and had to give somebody else some advice about following their passion or following their dream, what would that be? Or another way to ask it is, when you decided you fell in love with this loom, how did that happen? Did you just come upon the loom? Did you think any thoughts about, oh no, I shouldn't do this, but okay, I will? How was it when you walked in this space?
Right. When I stumbled across my first loom very much by accident. It was a random ad for the loom.
But it spoke to you.
It did. It did. And this space.
Had you been thinking about weaving?
Nothing, not in any more than an abstract. Someday that would be fun to go ahead and learn. When I had walked into the space and had the idea, that was also pretty surprising. But I did as much homework as I could
After
that, right? Trying to come up with what I thought would be a viable business plan. And then beyond that, every time I got spooked, there is a saying, there's a saying, I'm not even certain where it originated, but person one says, "What if I fall?" And the person responds with, "Oh, but what if you fly?" And that's what I kept in the back of my head, and was like, I'm gonna have to try this to see if it's gonna work. There's no other way of knowing, and so let's just try. And it has been a wild ride, but I have learned so much. I would never ever go back and change it.
Fabulous. I love hearing that. It's really interesting to me how, like you say, if you come across an ad, it's like the ethers come down and
This yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the stars align and
there you
things
go.
work.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Well,
Agreed.
thank you for visiting.
Thank you.
Okay, Rebecca Riley-Vargas at Three Moons Studio or Fiberworks in Chesterton, Indiana.
Yep.
See you soon.